One problem a lot of artists struggle with is painting leaves. So I've done a painting in Artrage here, painted on the iPad, lots of leaves in it. I'm going to show you how I painted that. I've even got a shirt on that's leaf themed, so everything's good. We're good to go. Let's get right into it. So here we are in Artrage. I've got a canvas of 4096 by 3000 pixels. Set at 300 dpi. I've imported my image and we're going to paint some leaves. So I begin by coating the canvas with a fairly strong yellow, and this is going to be, I thought I would kind of get the highlights of the leaves in first and then start working on the darks and putting the darks in. And this is something I've never done before, starting at the bottom of the painting and work the way up. Usually it's the other way around. I start at the top and work my way down. And when I was doing this, I was wondering why I was doing it, and I think it might be because it's digital, whereas if you're on a canvas, you don't want paint actually dripping from something you do higher up to a bit of your painting lower down. So maybe that's same as when you paint a wall, and I was wondering if that's why I would conventionally sort of work from the top down. But on this I just sort of went straight in at the bottom, and it's going to be a while till we actually get into painting the leaves. But what you'll see is I'm roughing in the background shapes and the leaf shapes. And I'm using the flat paintbrush for this, not the thick paint one, just the regular flat oil paintbrush. And I'm just looking at the photos, looking at local colour and sort of blocking it in as I'm going, sort of covering up a lot of that yellow and leaving little bits of it to sort of just shine through there. And you'll see I'm kind of putting in a little bit of branch work actually, which you see on the photo is sort of hanging down in the foreground. I kind of work with that for a little bit to start with, but then decide to scrap that. So that's lesson number one. Keep it simple. You don't need to paint it exactly as you see it. We're just trying to get an impression of some leaves. But okay, you could argue that my painting isn't exactly a copy of the photograph anyway, looking at the state of that. I just moved the canvas down there. I've got everything on one layer, and I just wanted more leaves and less foreground, so I just sort of dropped it down, rolled in the yellow, and then started painting over that again. And you can see now at this point I've put in some pretty dark colours and big areas of colour sort of over the canvas, and now I'm just refining it slightly, still with that square brush, drawing leaf shapes over the existing shadow area. And you can see I'm still playing with the idea of putting that branch in the foreground. It does go, and you see as soon as you start putting leaf shapes on, and I'm not drawing every single leaf carefully, putting the veins in and every kind of defined shape of the leaf. No, I'm not doing any of that. I'm just sort of putting a blob here and a blob there, which suggests a leaf shape. So ideally, I guess if they do come to a point, that helps, but they don't necessarily have to. I'm working within a fairly limited palette that I'm picking off the colour wheel here, because I am in Artrage on the iPad. And basically, I do want a really sunny scene where the shadows sort of the underleaves is sort of very dominant, and then you've got these lighter leaves on the top where the sun is catching them. Now we're going into sketching in the people. So what I did here for these, I kind of use the existing elements of the painting that I've got in now as a reference to decide how big to make the people. And once I got the first one in, the rest were easy, because I then just scaled them to the first one that I'd already painted, and just sort of matched them up to that. But you'll see my foreground isn't quite right, the way I've got the people, because they are sort of standing on the grass where mine aren't particularly. So I need to just tweak the grass a little bit, which you can see I'm doing there, just to tie that in. And I'm not going for detail in it here. I'm going through a phase at the minute where I'm not into looking at too much detail. When I was doing the pencil work and I was doing the tiger and one or two of the dry stone walls that I was drawing, I was way more into taking my time and doing detail. But at the minute, I feel in my life, the way I am, the way things are going, I want everything to be done at a race of knots, because I've got no time to spare for anything. So anyway, back to the painting. Sort of getting the shadows under the people. This was a much bigger painting, by the way. It was sort of, I've reduced it down to about a quarter of its original size. What I did here, I've created a new layer, set the blend mode to multiply, because I felt there was nothing that was a focal point. Everything was sort of dominating and saying, look at me, look at me. And I wanted to get that group of people and that little red bag the emphasis of the scene. So I selected a sort of greyed off blue, or more of a blue off grey, I guess, and painted that in. You saw that layer there very quickly. Overlaid that, and then I just merged the layers together to continue painting. So I've got this nice shadow underneath the trees. So that's something to think about when you're doing the trees, that everything under it is going to be in shadow, and it's easy to sort of forget that and have everything of sort of a similar tones. But I think that has given by putting that blue in, it's given the painting way more depth and structure, and it feels now like the leaves that are hanging over are really sort of forward and in the bright sunlight, where everything else is sort of thrown into shadow, except where the light's catching the you've got this sort of backlight rimming the edge of the people, or putting a rim light around the edge of the people. I shouldn't say rimming, really. There we go. Carrying on with the people, getting that yellow coat in there. There's one person, well, there's a couple of people I miss out. I missed the ladder out because that didn't obviously add anything to the painting at all. I missed the person that's walking out of the scene, because you don't want people walking out of your scene. And then there's another person, all you can see is his legs and waist, or her legs and waist. I'm not sure if it's a man or a woman, because they're hidden by the trees. So I didn't feel like I needed them in the painting at all. Zooming in here to put in the last little group of people, I felt that I needed a fair amount of people in this painting. I could have sort of kept it really just one or two. That would have been really lazy, I suppose, because I did want to get this group in. This was a craft fair, and it was a busy day, and I wanted to kind of get that in it, with like lots of people buzzing about and doing. So here we go. Typically just painting those people in, feeling the way, not measuring anything. Well, I say not measuring anything, I do, because I'm looking very closely at the position of the other people I've already painted and where their heads. I always look at where the heads are and then position the next head in line with that, and then the feet, and then I paint the people within that space. So I suppose this is a video about painting people as much as it is leaves, really. I put leaves on the title though because I wanted to keep it fairly simple, and there are a lot of leaves in this painting, and a lot of people do find it really difficult to paint groups of leaves and end up with a sludgy mess a lot of the time. And if you look at the when I zoom out and you look at the leaves, it does look a little bit of a sludgy mess, I must admit. Well, not so much sludge because I haven't mixed the paints together too much, but they certainly look a little bit abstract, let's say, at this point. So I'm just finishing off this last character. This is the last person I decide to paint. I'm not doing the others for the reasons I've said. I'm really loving what I'm doing with Artrage and the way I can get these sort of really bold colours on that canvas, especially when I'm doing scenes with a lot of sun in, as we are here. It's interesting actually. I mean, I'm using a little bit of thick paint now to so I've changed the brush. It's the first time I've changed the brush. I was going to say it's interesting, I don't use the palette knives in this painting. I'm not using tubes of paint, but I do use the thick paint just to put a little bit of detail and oomph into the people, and I'm going to stick with that thick paint brush for the leaves when I get back on them. And what's important is I'm using the round edged oil brush, thick oil paint brush, not the square one for the leaves once I get back into them. And there you can see I'm doing it now, and with a flick of the brush you can get these really nice leaf shapes. And I'm putting the highlighted leaves over all of those shadows that I've painted, and I'm just picking the colour off the canvas, putting that little bit of a bush there. It's good to put blues in your shadows. Don't go too grey, otherwise you end up with a very kind of flat looking painting. Having said that, I did use grey for some leaves there. So that's it. That is my painting of leaves on a very sunny day at a craft fair. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, a big thumbs up as always is much appreciated, and if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing because I have lots of videos like this and I would love to be sharing them with you. So hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.